Cheer for Danielle. Speaking of the Olympics, the highways through Chicago are a veritable steeplechase. Non-stop construction, right? Crazy-ass Mario Kart style lanes, terrible drivers, potholes the size of Buicks. This is a story about a road trip through Chicago. It involves 20 brothers from other mothers many years ago, a giant RV, a keg of beer, way too much red meat, and the highways of Chicago. Let me set the story. Story starts in Minneapolis. My good friend Mike rents a 30-foot RV. He drives it to Chicago. And of course, all of us pile, all 20 of us, into the RV. You're probably thinking, how do you get 20 dudes into an RV? It's kind of like a human Tetris game. Coming to the 28 Olympics, human Tetris. But hey, fun fact about RVs. Did you know RVs have a giant shitter tank? Enormous. Made out of plastic. It's bolted to the undercarriage of the RV, and it's connected to a tiny toilet. Remember that for later. Back to the story, okay? So, we're all in this RV, and we're driving through Chicago. All these drivers, it's driving us nuts. And as we're heading there, we're noticing that, well, the trip went great, but the way home wasn't so good. When you have 20 young men composting red meat and fermented beverages in their guts for days on end, and they all share the same vehicle and the same tiny toilet, and then they all decide to void themselves of the compost into the same giant shitter tank. There's a word for that. Hubris. So, the trip home is very eventful, let's just say. The RV cabin gets deathly quiet. It's like we're holding a seance. We're very nervous, of course. We hear splashing and gurgling. It's like we're praying, okay? We don't know what's going to go wrong next. We're holding hands. This is bad news. This is not a good thing to happen, especially considering, you know, I don't remember there being any warning about a capacity on what you can put into a shitter tank, but in retrospect, I can say there definitely is a limit to how much stuff you can put into a shitter tank. So, the drive home is terrifying, okay? The road is unforgiving. Jarring pothole after jarring pothole. It's jolting the RV. The RV shitter tank is completely full. Of course, this jolts the RV and it dislodges our giant shitter tank. Now the good news is the shitter tank clings to the undercarriage of the RV like an action hero. The bad news is we're now dragging the tank, okay? So, we're in a giant RV, going right through Chicago at 55 knots. We've got a giant shitter tank that's made of plastic and it's too full, and the insane friction of the Dan Ryan Highway, okay? Not a good combination, folks. Not at all a good combination. Eventually, we bore a hole in the bottom of the tank. Yeah, we're leaking oil, so to speak. As all of this is happening, unbeknownst to us, we're leaving behind us the world's largest racing stripe right through the middle of Chicago. I am not kidding. This is a hot mess. Hey, you know, on your phone, you've got a map app, right? It tells you how to get around. The roads change colors. It's color-coded. There are red roads, yellow roads, and green roads. If you're looking at your map and you see a brown highway, take another way home. Spend the extra half hour. Back to my story. We get pulled over by a cop. Our driver, Mike, is invited outside for a lively discussion with the policeman and an up-close look at the big stripe. Okay, I feel bad for this cop. He wants this conversation to end. He's breathing through his mouth. The cop goes back in his patrol car to talk to Mike through a small opening in the window to spare his nose from this cruel fog. Finally he tells Mike, I'm just going to call you guys a tow truck. And the cop leaves the scene of the crime. So we're waiting there, and a service truck is dispatched. Now, we're not terribly hard to find at this point. Where are we located? Head north on the Dan Ryan, follow the brown smoldering stripe. Do you have a map app? It's the Brown Highway. That's where we are. So the truck arrives, okay? A service tech gets out and actually resolves our crisis. I will not go into detail as to what he does or what happens to him during this moment. Suffice it to say, he takes a very long hazmat shower that night and incinerates all his clothing. Poor guy. I still go back to Chicago. I love that city. A lot of good stories, a lot of memories. By far, my most indelible memory remains buried beneath the old Dan Ryan Highway. Someday, an archaeological dig will go down beneath the strata and retell the story of the big strike. Thank you very much.